Welcome to the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast, episode 74.
Hi, I'm Chris. Thanks for joining us today as we celebrate our 3-year anniversary of this podcast for the Becoming Ellie community.
And I'm Jill. It's hard to believe that we've been doing this for 3 years. Thank you for listening and being part of this journey. Chris and I have really enjoyed creating the podcast and the Becoming Ellie website.
We're called Becoming Ellie because Jill and I wanted to be like Ellie. She was the Norse goddess of aging and defeated Thor in a wrestling match.
We want to be strong like Ellie as we grow older. I'm not sure that I could win any wrestling match right now, but I like to think that it's possible.
Yeah, I know. That's how I'm feeling too. But now that we've been putting out 3 years of podcast episodes, I've learned a lot. And I'm wondering, are there a few things that you're thinking you've learned as well, Jill?
Well, I've learned an awful lot, I know. But there are a few common themes that I think keep appearing, and I'd say they are: we should eat more vegetables, and that we should definitely be doing strength training, and we should probably keep some cardio in the routine.
Right. Those are all good ones. And I could probably list about 10 more things. It's just like every person that we talk to, I get more information. I learn a couple new things from each person, I think. I think one thing I would add to that is sleep.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we always are talking about food and exercise because that pops in the head, but there's a whole triangle there with recovery, rest, sleep, and, you know, the whole mental aspect of affirmations and that resilience part.
Oh, right, definitely.
Yeah.
Motivation, discipline,
Yes.
all of those things, yes. And habits. I know we've talked a bit about starting habits or forming habits, or, you know, how do we do that?
Yeah. Well, I've read a couple books on habits, and I keep returning to them as well. I guess that's my habit at the beginning of the year is to talk about habits. But I seem to do that in September as well because it's sort of like the new school year. You know, there's a lot of different ways people will approach their life, their routines, and, you know, self-improvement kind of things.
One thing over thinking about the different people we've talked to is that we have people who eat paleo, some who are keto, some who are vegan, some who eat everything. What seems to matter is that we find out what works best for ourselves, that each of us has. Mm-hmm. So what is best for me might not be best for you, and vice versa. Maybe we should, if nothing else, be a little more tolerant of people who eat differently than we do.
Absolutely. Because everyone seems to have different mindsets as well. I can recall a couple people that we had on the podcast over the 3 years that were very strict in what they ate, whether it was packaged foods or certain time frames when they eat food, you know, almost very, very disciplined. And then I've heard other people say, well, you just eat everything in moderation. And, you know, whenever I hear the word just, that always says to me, they've never really had a problem with food, have they? Or weight or what have you. And maybe that's misleading. But
so I ended up with chocolates in my house from the holidays. That It's a great reminder that I do not do well with moderation on certain things, like chocolate. Yeah. I am better off to just not have it in the house because I am not one of those people who says, oh, I can eat one little piece of chocolate a day, and I'll have this one little piece of chocolate as a treat at the end of the day or whatever. And no.
And I know lots of people that do that and suggest that, but I'm with you, Jill. Certain foods are very difficult for me to eat in moderation, and I'm reminded that one of my friends so nicely dropped off this kind of cake or pie. I'm not sure what you call it, but there was something about this cake or pie. It was called a cranberry Christmas cake or pie.
Okay.
And it basically had cranberries and I don't know if it was walnuts or pecans, to tell you the truth at this point, but it was not overly sweet. It was on the unsweet side, more tart. But there was something about that flavor. I could not stop eating it. It was just delicious. And because there's, only the two of us, and no kids coming over to the house. And they're usually, that stuff gets polished off so easily when you have a lot of people around at Christmas time. But it was such a different Christmas with the pandemic this year. I realized that one is definitely not one I can eat in moderation.
Yes. So, some people can do moderation, others can't. And I guess that's one thing. I actually didn't need a podcast to learn that little trick.
Yeah. Well, I know that sometimes I get involved in something and I tend to overdo it, whether it's not eating in moderation or exercising in moderation. I'll get it in my mind that I really want to do something, and I find that I don't start out in moderation, which I really need to kind of build up to things. And I did learn that over the past 3 years, during my running phases. The first 2 years of our podcast, I was doing quite a bit of running,
right,
to the point where I did a little bit more than moderation, in a point where now I've backed off. I need a little more oomph in my exercise point. But I think you're back into it now. You seem like you're, running and doing your cross training and strength and everything. Is that accurate, or is that just my illusion here?
It's somewhat accurate. So as soon as something comes along that interrupts it for some reason, it's a struggle to get back into that routine.
Yeah.
But I have been running at least somewhat, and I have been doing my indoor biking lately, and I have been trying to do strength training. Not as much as I would. So that's the thing, as I feel like I'm not doing as much as I would like, but I am doing something.
And that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I did a blog post the other day, kind of comparing year over year. And I took 5 years of examples because I've been wearing my Fitbit for 5 full years. And this past year with the pandemic, it was very noticeable how much my activity levels have dropped off, because I've been staying home, not going to the gym, not doing so many group rides that I used to with my bicycle friends. And it's amazing how you can see it in the numbers and how things change in your mindset as a result of it. Because this year I felt like I didn't do anything. So I was happy to see that at least I did an average of 50 minutes of being active. It's not necessarily 50 minutes of exercise every day, but 50 minutes of activity, which I was happy at least with that. Although compared to the other years, it was closer to the high 70s, low 80s. So, it's not as much as I'd want, but at least I'm doing something.
Right. Well, it didn't drop to nothing, or
right.
20 or something. Yeah. I just realized, so I don't know, in August, I think it was, somebody asked me what my annual step challenge was. And I was like, I really have absolutely no idea. I just have my goal at 10,000. I used to tweak that goal, and then it changes all your, what, I just didn't like how Fitbit handled it. So I just leave it at 10,000 and then have in my head if I want to do more. But what I realized was that in 2019, my total number of steps had dropped. So I decided I would try to top that number this year. And so when I went and checked it this week, I did. I actually topped 2018 as well, so
excellent.
I was happy.
Well, you had an injury for part of that, so I think that's why it dropped so dramatically, but it's great that you were back up.
I also, one thing, this is kind of silly, but I moved out of my house into a condo.
Okay.
My house entailed a lot more step. You're going up to get the laundry, the dirty clothes or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
there were more steps. In
the basement,
because it was a bigger house. I think part of it was just that my inside walking, it was a lot less.
Well, yeah, there's definitely something to be said for that, for sure.
So I think it was a combination of things. So I just sort of randomly decided, well, okay, my goal then for the rest of this year will be to make sure I get enough steps in that I beat last year's total.
Yeah, and that's great. You did it. Are you doing that further for 2021, or maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here?
Maybe not. I looked at the numbers, and I did do a blog post on all this, so you can actually see the numbers. But my highest year in steps was in 2016, which was a year we were training for a half marathon or something, I think.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe the relay. I don't know. I did a lot of running that year. And So I decided I might as well set the goal for this year of trying to get a higher number of steps than I did in 2016.
That's great.
I was going to say I'll try to do it, but I know one thing we learned from our podcast is to not say I'll try.
Yep.
I will do it.
Yeah, there is no try. There's only do.
Yes, I will walk more steps this year.
Right. That's great. Well, the other thing that I have really learned over the past few years here is that tracking works. And it's also psychologically difficult for me to track my food. And I don't quite get why it's so difficult for me to do that. Starts out in the mornings pretty easy because I have pretty much the same thing every morning. But that's going to be something I'm going to work on this year, is actually tracking the food. I can track my weight. I can track my miles. My Fitbit helps me track, all the different things that you track. I know tracking what I eat would probably be my best tool for maintaining a healthy lifestyle, healthy eating habits for sure.
And a lot of people just say that, track what you eat. I don't know what it is. I find that to be the most challenging. And you're right. I can do pretty much breakfast and lunch because they don't deviate a whole awful lot.
Yes.
It's the dinner. As soon as you fix something that's more than anything that it requires cooking, like ingredients. You add a cup of chicken broth, add a whatever, all those things. That's what when it gets challenging, I think. Yeah. But the more that you do, the more you have that data. So it really should be not that excruciating.
Well, I usually use MyFitnessPal, and I have found that the data in there is all over the place, but there is a lot of data, and you can pretty much find what works for you and what's accurate per se. It's just going to it and logging it in as I'm cooking or, as I'm preparing the meal. I think that's really the trick. And I wake up the next morning and I didn't put that in. Then I put it in and it's like, wow, I went over. Big surprise.
Yeah.
I have heard of people. I remember when I was doing Weight Watchers, people, instead of starting with breakfast in their day, they would start with lunch, dinner, and then breakfast. And they would call their day, noon to noon instead of wake up and that's
so
the day.
They would log noon to noon so that
yes. So if they overate at dinner, they could hold off at noon and help balance it out. So really 24 hours is 24 hours. It's just, I get so used to waking up and 7 a.m. is, morning and 7 p.m. is evening, but I always wondered how that might work, but it does really work for some people, and I guess that's a way to do it, right?
Yeah, sure, that would be fine. So that's the other thing we've talked about a lot with different people is the breakfast and all that made me think of this, is fasting.
Right, the intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had some people on the podcast about it, and I know we're talking about having some people on the podcast in 2021 that are experts in intermittent fasting. There's a lot of interest in that right now.
Yeah. So I wonder if people who do a lot of intermittent fasting, if they log their food. Because I'm sure you could still quickly overeat, even if you're fasting.
Yeah. I guess the idea would be don't stuff yourself in the 2 meals you eat.
You don't feel like you have to make up for lost time.
Don't make a cranberry Christmas pie. At least don't bring it to my house. I'll tell you, that was wonderful, though. It's the kind of thing that I'm going to make and give to other people.
Well, good. There's nothing wrong with having treats at Christmas time or whatever.
Right. Well, timing the food, I do think makes a big difference. I had wondered about intermittent fasting with exercising really hard because I always had heard to eat a little something before you exercise, but I know that, doing hard exercise on a fast, before you eat any breakfast or before you break your fast, isn't really as hard for me as I thought it was going to be.
Well, yes, I know that. So they do say that, but then I've read that is not necessarily true. So I think that's probably one of those things that you have to figure out. I also wonder if it depends on your own physiology. I suspect people who are really lean and who work out hard may need that
Mm-hmm.
extra food around their workout, whereas some of us may not need so much.
Yeah, maybe that's my problem. I don't need that much. You say that so nicely. Yeah, well, I haven't been doing super hard workouts. I haven't been running. I've been off running probably now for more than a year. And even the biking, I haven't really ridden my bike. I think I got one good ride in November, but the last 2 full months, I don't think I've been on my bicycle. So,
yeah, well, it's that time of year.
I see a big change. Yeah, it's that time of year, exactly.
And the gym your gym is open, but you're probably not going.
Yeah, I'm not going to the gym right now because I'm caring for my elderly mother, and she's still weeks, I hate to say months, away from getting the vaccine, but so that's where we are right now. I daydream about that gym. I really do. In the mornings when I know my class is going, I think, well, I could go online and do the virtual class. I mean, they're broadcasting it to the members, and there's no reason why I don't do that. And then I come up with a million excuses, like my tennis shoes feel really weird on the rug.
Yeah, I don't like doing the virtual workout so much.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I know they work for some people, though. So I'm getting my exercise going outside, walking, doing some yard work. We've had a lot of windstorms and a lot of trees down, so it's been helpful for me to, do the yard work to provide some form of exercise. It's not the bicycling and the pure joy of the endorphins with a bike ride. But
hauling tree branches around, that's, I think, got to fall under strength training.
Yeah, well, kind of. I don't do it over and over, and there's a lot of dragging involved.
Okay, well.
Yeah. So I think before we started recording, I was talking to you about tracking my bicycle miles and how I always track on Strava,
right,
the bicycle miles.
I'm on Strava as well.
I love how it really does a great job with the GPS, and you can see exactly where you went, compare your ride to the year before or the bike ride before that you did that same trail. But I have to say they've adjusted the rules of what you're allowed to see, and I'm not prepared to spend a monthly fee to subscribe. So I'm a little disappointed this year. It's not as easy. It used to be they spelled it out every year how many miles you did on your bike, and I'm missing that now. I'm thinking about maybe going to Map My Ride. I don't know what's available on that, but I do have an account there and haven't done it as much.
Yeah, I have an account there. I think I have an account on every fitness app there is.
Right.
I noticed Strava's year-end data this year was not particularly useful to me. They made a big job of making it really, they put in all this animation and stuff, so it was pretty, but that does not satisfy my analytical soul.
I think I'm analytical too. I would have preferred to be able to download an Excel file or a CSV or something like that where I could really crunch the numbers and get a feel for
Right. Fitbit is pretty good about the data, and so they've sort of changed things over the years. But you can if you're willing to get into it and push some buttons and stuff, you can find the data.
Yes.
I did experience a little. So you were talking about your active minutes.
Yes.
That you did, and then you wrote that nice blog post about it. So then I immediately went and tried to look at my active minutes, and I could see them, but I could not get those yearly numbers like you had. And I think it's because I changed Fitbits this year.
Oh, that's right.
And they went from active minutes to zone minutes.
Zones. Oh, so it was your cardio.
So it just changed. It's basically the same thing as far as I can tell. It just gives you a little more detail, like on heart rate kind of thing.
But you're not looking at apples to apples anymore.
I can't get those annual counts anymore on
that would bug me.
Yeah, so that was frustrating because I wanted to compare myself. I wanted to compare myself to you, Chris.
Oh, well.
I wanted to see how I compared.
Well, I can tell you right there, you would be way up there. But it's best, I think, to compare yourself to yourself.
Well, yes, I know. That's more to the point. But I wanted it made me. So how about I didn't want to compare myself to you. You're
competitive, though. I know you're really competitive, and that's a good thing.
I really just wanted to see how my numbers looked, because my Strava numbers looked pretty abysmal.
Right.
I thought.
Well, I was surprised I got as many bike rides in as I did, but I have to credit that to one of my friends who was with me consistently Sunday after Sunday. We would take the same bike ride every Sunday. And there was something very familiar and routine and reassuring about that. It was a really great thing for me this summer. I had a lot of challenges this summer, so that was wonderful. And I wish we were back in summer right now. But of course, you can always wish yourself away.
Yeah, you can. Well, at any rate, you're right. The data is good. There's lots of ways to get data, I suppose. You can get data on your fitness scale.
I just had Facebook send me this ad. You know how Facebook has a tendency to read your mind these days? I swear they listen in to what you're saying. But they wanted me to buy this poster that was a 365-day poster, so every day was there, and you could mark off every day, like if you exercised or if you did something, like if you wanted to do planks for 1 minute every day, you could just mark that off. You put the poster up on the wall, and then you kind of build a chain of every day I did that. And seeing as today is early in January, I was half tempted to get that. And then I thought, you know what? I could make one.
I saw something someone had, you could download it and print it out. It was artwork where there was a picture. I don't know if it was a snake or it was something long. Any rate, every day you colored it a certain color for whether it was cardio, rest, strength.
Oh, smart. Yeah.
And then by the end of the year, you'd have this whole thing colored in.
Blue for swimming.
Yes, exactly. Red for
heartbeats.
Yeah, something, whatever. But it's sort of the same
cool
idea. But it's
sounds like it would look like Candyland when you were all done.
Yeah, a visual representation of your workouts.
Well, for years I've marked it in a paper calendar, and I found that's handy. And then, the last, like I said, 5 years I've been doing the Fitbit thing, and I really enjoy that. I know keeping some sort of track really makes a difference.
Right.
It motivates me because I don't want to see an empty space.
Right. So data's good.
Right.
Back to what we've learned from the podcast, I was going to say we could talk about food.
Well, I think if I think back to this not this year, but last year in the podcast, we did try new vegetables.
Yeah, the Veggie Challenge. So at the time, I wasn't sure if it was resonating with our listeners, but since then, I have had a number of people who have commented how much they liked it and that it sort of motivated them, and whether they told us that or they wrote it in a comment or wherever, I enjoyed that. I was thinking maybe we should try doing something like that again this year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't maybe set it up for the whole year because that's a little daunting, but maybe 3 months.
Well, the new vegetables worked for me for about half of the year, and then I kind of went through all the new vegetables that I liked. But I will say what Veggie Challenge did for me made me very aware of how many vegetables I do eat. I up my vegetable intake a lot. And I really was eating a lot more salads because of that.
So maybe we could do the Veggie Challenge, and you could either focus on a new vegetable or a new recipe kind of thing. Doing something different with your vegetables.
I'd love to have something in there of just eating the vegetable.
Well, maybe we should get a map.
Because new isn't that comforting right now. I'm not looking for new challenges. I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know.
So
I'm not explaining it right. A new vegetable, a new recipe is a huge hurdle for me right now.
How many vegetables a day do you want to eat?
Right. Well, I think for me, a minimum is 5.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind going to 7 or 9 because I just absolutely adore vegetables.
Okay. So maybe instead of worrying about how you fix them, we do like some sort of, we were just talking about data. Maybe we make a little map of the vegetables, and every day that you eat 5 vegetables or 7, whatever number you want to choose, you get to mark it off.
Yeah, now we're getting somewhere. I like that idea. I'd love for some of our listeners to send over a suggestion of how they think they would interpret the Veggie Challenge.
Yeah,
or
so I think we could tweak it.
Yeah, I think it could be tweaked.
And I would love to hear what other people have to say, because I think we could have something that would be kind of fun and tie in with the keeping track of things.
Yes.
I know it's easy to say, we talk with people and they'll say eat 7 servings of vegetables a day or eat whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to say, oh, yes, okay. And then, the end of the day comes and you think, well, did I eat? I don't even think about it that consciously. Did I eat 7 servings of vegetables? I don't think about it that way. I might think, well, I didn't eat as many vegetables because I was busy eating my cheese and crackers or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. So if you have any ideas on the Veggie Challenge, please let us know, and maybe we'll start an official challenge maybe beginning of February or something. That gives us some time to figure out what we're doing.
Yeah, that sounds great.
We could do a 3-month challenge and everyone can participate in some way.
Yeah, I always like something new in February because so often January starts out gangbusters and then all of a sudden February comes along and it's like, okay,
So I was thinking about that. Usually this time of year I'm busy complaining that at the gym it's full of people who have joined for 3 weeks. And
you're not finding that's a problem this year.
I'm guessing that the poor gyms are not having that issue. That's the thing about all this, is that it's not just that you don't go, it's that businesses are not bringing in money or customers or whatever.
Right. Well, I'm continuing my membership as the fee goes, because I want the gym to be there when I'm ready.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to find ways of being by myself as an extrovert who love those races because of all those people around me motivating me. It's so different now. This may be a much longer marathon. This may be an ultra, not just the marathon I thought it was going to be, but it's an ultra marathon.
Yeah.
And the sooner I, come up with more tips and tricks to get my mindset into this fitness during the pandemic, the better.
All right. Maybe we need to think about tracking with that too. Some sort of accountability thing.
Right. Well, I picked up something that I heard you say, I'm not sure if it was last podcast or 2 podcasts ago, but something about downloading a book and only allowing yourself to listen to it when you are exercising. And oh my gosh, I'm itching to get back on the trail so I can listen to the end of this John Grisham novel. It's like a whodunit kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, so you're doing that. That's good.
I'm doing that, and it's working, man. I just love it. It's such a great idea.
It's like, I'm done. I finished my run or I finished my walk or whatever. It's like, but I'm not really finished with my chapter.
Yeah, the chapter's not over, and I don't want to shut it off, and I don't want to cheat either. I don't want to listen to it, as I drive back or what have you. You got me walking.
Well,
you got me
good.
Walking a little longer when that's the whole point. So, those are the kinds of things that I love from our podcasts, tricks, tips, and just like sneaky ways of tricking my mind into doing more than what set out to do.
Right. Very good.
So do you have a mantra for 2021 that you are using, or, a motivational motto or what have you, some sort of inspirational thing? I keep texting to people over and over, hang in there, which is, I feel like that's the mantra for this year.
Well, maybe it is. I don't know. I will confess that the end of 2020 ended up being just a mess for me, and so I have not really thought too much about that going forward. But I haven't even done my 3 words for the year, but I'm working on it. Yeah. So I have to come up with that. I'm just a little behind. I'm behind schedule. Did you do 3 words for this year?
I'm still working on them. I put that into my blog, a couple different words that I was thinking about. Resilience just keeps coming up over and over. And beyond resilience, fit and strong. I love that about our Becoming Ellie community and our Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast. Those 2 words mean a lot to me, fit, strong. and that may become the words that I focus on.
Okay, that's.
But I haven't done the full commitment yet. And I listened to another podcast at the beginning of December where there was a guy that was talking about the difference between interest and commitment. You really have to be all in commitment, because just staying interested is sort of like trying, but not doing.
Right.
And I'd like to have a word of my 3 words, because fit and strong, that may count as one word.
What about commitment? Maybe that should be your word.
And maybe commitment is the 3rd word. I don't know. I've been doing these 3 words for a long time now.
I have too, but you know what? I realized I have absolutely no idea what my words were for 2020.
Yeah, I had to go back and look.
Yeah.
Declutter was one of my words. It's like, I guess I decluttered. Mid-March, everything kind of went out the window.
Right. So I don't know what I was planning
it's
on
like
doing.
January was March. I don't know. The discipline, the habits, the routines.
I had a goal, I don't know whether it was this year or 2 years ago, or 2020 or 2019, but, I did that whole pull-up thing, and then I got out of it, and I know there's a number of people in the Becoming Ellie community who are working on doing pull-ups, and I really liked working towards that because it was such a great way of improving my upper body strength, and I sort of keep working on it, and then I keep getting something happens. So I need that commitment of, regardless of what happens, that I still figure out how to do something.
It's an audacious goal. I mean, it's a biggie.
But I really felt so good when I was able to do that.
Oh, yeah. I've never been able to do it. I had that for my goal. Oh, gosh. I think it was 2015 or 16. And I worked towards it, but never got quite there.
Right.
But I think that one's too far away from me right now to have that be my goal.
Well, that could be, that has to be, even for me, a long-term goal, because I start working on it and then something happens. And
right.
So that's sort of what I need to figure. Maybe it's consistency needs to be my word for the year. Or focus. I'm easily distracted, I will say that.
Yeah. Well, I find that I try to distract myself from worrying about things, whether it's the state of the world or my own little world. I find that I really enjoy distracting myself. So maybe what I should do is figure out a way to distract myself with exercise so that I'm distracting myself with things that were actually good for me. I remember one of our guests, I think it was Pam Sherman, talking about, because she had a tremendous way of doing these pull-ups where you actually start out by lowering yourself.
Oh, yeah,
rather than trying to pull up. Yeah, negative pull-ups. Is that how you got to do it?
Yeah.
Were you doing negatives?
Here's my little negative pull-up story. This is just sort of funny. But, first I just did things like hang from the bar. But then I started doing negative pull-ups. I'll tell you 2 things about it. So I started doing them.
Describe how that goes.
So you get yourself, so you climb up to the pull-up bar so that your head is above the bar, and then you slowly lower yourself down. So you start like where you would end up if you were doing a pull-up, but you start there and then lower yourself down. It builds a lot of muscle. It's just different than pulling yourself up. And I got to the point where I was doing that, and then we would strap weights onto me, and I would do negative pull-ups.
Weighted negative pull-ups?
Yeah, so I would put a chain out with a plate on it and lower myself down. And I remember there was a young woman who I was friends with at the gym.
Yeah.
And, she was in her 30s. And she came in the gym where I was doing that one time, and she said, "Oh, Ma," she said, you are, I can't remember now what she said. She said, "But you look like you're kicking ass or something."
Yeah, kick ass, or badass or something like that.
That's probably what she said. You're a badass or something. It was great.
Yeah.
But when I first started doing them, I couldn't remember what they were called. So I said to Steve, my trainer, I said, I know we keep doing these, and I said, when you tell me that they're negative pull-ups, I remember it. I said, but then I forget what they're called. I'm thinking negative, whatever. He said, you're just such a positive person that you can't think about being negative. I said, now I will remember. I never forgot it again.
Well, you are a positive person, Jill. It's great to hear that.
It was funny, but that's how I remember what they are. They're a good way to build some strength.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
I did want to give a special shout out to one of our podcast guests, and that was our first guest, Maria Stottleman.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So since we interviewed her 3 years ago, Maria completed her RN degree and is now a registered nurse, and she now works as an ICU nurse at a children's hospital.
Oh my gosh,
so
ICU.
She does ICU work for children. So she spends a lot of time helping sick children and their families. She still does some training on the side. I still see her. But I'm so proud of her. And she's been on our podcast a couple of times. I think she was on when we did the elliptical.
The elliptical, that's what I was thinking.
Yes,
yeah.
But I just wanted to say that, she was our first guest, and since then, she's done a lot.
Well, congratulations to Maria, and yeah, I'm proud of her too. ICU, that's challenging.
Yeah, that's what when she said that's what she was going to do, and she requested that. I mean, she really went out of her way to try and get that.
Wow, good for her.
It was funny because when she was doing her clinical work as a nursing student,
yeah.
She'd worked as a trainer all this time, so she said she's like talking to the patient. They're like, like a stroke patient or whatever, to squeeze her hand, and she'd be like, "You can do it! Come on!" It was like she was doing her.
She's doing personal training.
Personal training with these
physical therapy. Yes. Yeah.
She said the other nurses sort of looked at her like, "What in the world?"
Well, she is very encouraging. She's a light. She really is. She's a light. Well, that's wonderful. I hope some of our listeners will chime in with their thoughts and, would send us, whether it's an email or contact us through the blog, or maybe even we have a voicemail, 330-970-6662. People can leave a voicemail for us. It only goes for 3 minutes, so it can't be too long of a voicemail, but...
Or call back.
Yeah, or call back, yeah. But we'd love to hear from them, from you, I should say.
I would love to hear from listeners, too, about as we move forward with the podcast. I'd like to know if people have some topic they want us to cover, or if they know someone who should be a guest on the podcast. It would be great if people would share that with us, because we're going to be planning out the year here, and I'd love to know what people want to hear about.
Yes, and if you have some ideas about the Veggie Challenge or how you want to do your tracking, some good hints or tips. We all like to hear ways that we can improve, our fitness and our healthy lifestyle. Love to hear from you. Yeah.
So I think as we look to the future, we're going to be tracking fitness, tracking food, eating more vegetables.
How do you track motivation?
I suspect so. You know what? We keep talking about the fact that motivation comes and goes.
Right.
So you need to have the habit, or that this is just what you do.
Yeah, the positive mental attitude. It's been a challenge to hang on to that sometimes. And whenever we ask people, how do you define fit? Because that is a question that we often ask our guests. They almost always revert to both mental and physical, and it's funny when we're on the podcast, we're talking physical, what we eat, how we work out. But as soon as you really define fit, a lot of it is that mental, whether it's resiliency or...
And the other thing is, nobody says, I think being fit is being able to do a pull-up.
Right.
What they do say is being fit is being in the state that allows you to live your life in a healthy way, or allows you to do things that you want to do. It allows you to travel. It allows you to take care of yourself. It allows you to do all of those things that you want to do. No one ever says being fit is being able to do 10 push-ups.
Right. You can chase your dog if it gets lost on the leash or what have you.
Right. Because no one says if being fit, you have to be able to run a mile at a certain speed. But
thank goodness, because I'm probably way slower than that.
Yeah.
I'm part of the turtle team.
But,
yes.
And that's probably the important thing to remember is that doing all of this is that it allows us to live life to its fullest.
Yeah, the way we want to live life. That's great. That's great.
And beat someone in a wrestling match if the need should arise.
Named Thor.
Yeah, if Thor ever shows up, he's in for a real thrashing.
Oh, golly. Well, on that note, I think we should close this one out and look forward to next time.
All right. Happy New Year. Stay healthy and see you next time.
Take care. Bye-bye now.
Bye.